welcome back this evening. It's time again to let the world quiet itself down, to let the steady rhythm of the day fade into the soft tick of the night. You've done enough for now. There's nothing more to fix, nothing more to finish, only the simple act of resting. Let your breath slow, your shoulders fall, and your thoughts drift to wherever they want to go. You don't have to hold them, or shape them, or make sense of them. Just listen for the faint pulse of calm that sits underneath everything else. Tonight's story is called The Clockmaker's Garden. It's about a place where time grows wild, where hours bloom like petals, and the quiet hum of gears sounds almost like wind through leaves. Somewhere between workshop and forest, a man once planted clocks instead of seeds, and waited to see what would grow. So settle in wherever you are. Let the stillness unfold, gentle and unhurried. And as the story begins, let yourself wander through ticking leaves, through soft light, through time that doesn't mind if it stands still for a while. The garden was hidden behind a small iron gate that didn't seem to belong to anything. It stood at the end of a narrow lane, surrounded by low stone walls that leaned inward, as if they were listening to something secret. Beyond the gate, the air shimmered faintly, not with heat or light, but with the slow movement of time itself, visible in the way the leaves turned and paused before falling. When I pushed the gate open, it made no sound. It simply swung aside, as though it had been waiting for me to arrive. Inside, the air was cool and heavy with the scent of metal and moss. At first glance, it looked like any other garden, paths winding through ferns and hedges, a few benches placed beneath trees that bent toward the light. But as I walked farther in, I began to notice small differences. The flowers turned their heads not toward the sun, but toward the faint glimmer of brass gears nestled between the roots. Tiny pendulums swayed among the vines, their motion so precise that even the wind seemed to move in rhythm with them. A stream ran through the center of the garden, its water perfectly clear, flowing over stones etched with numbers and lines. Each ripple carried a faint sound, not like rushing water, but like the slow, even ticking of a clock heard from another room. I crouched beside it and watched as droplets caught the light, forming brief reflections of distant hours before vanishing downstream. It felt less like I was standing in a garden, and more like I had stepped inside a moment that had been growing for centuries. Somewhere nearby, a bell chimed once, soft and hollow. The sound rippled through the air, and every leaf in the garden seemed to tremble in acknowledgement. It wasn't the bell of a clock tower. It was smaller, personal, like something used to mark the passing of a single thought. When it faded, the silence it left behind felt different, not empty, but balanced, as if the world had just taken a breath and let it out slowly. As I continued walking, I noticed a faint glow near the far end of the path. It came from within a cluster of tall glass domes that lined the edge of the garden. Each dome held something different inside, not plants or flowers, but mechanisms. Tiny clockworks shaped like seeds, springs wound tight within glass stems, and little wheels that turned as if powered by thought alone. The light inside them flickered softly, like a heartbeat made visible. At the center of it all stood a figure, an old man in a long coat, his back to me, carefully adjusting the gears of a large ornate clock grown into the trunk of a tree. He moved slowly, with the patience of someone who had long ago stopped worrying about finishing anything. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but sure, like the voice of someone speaking directly to time itself. "You're just in time," he said, and smiled without turning around. He turned toward me slowly, his face lined but peaceful, eyes bright with that soft kind of light you see in people who spend their lives tending to delicate things. The brass lenses of his spectacles caught the faint glow from the domes, and for a moment I could see the reflection of tiny gears turning behind his pupils. He carried the smell of oil and cedar, and when he spoke again, his words seemed to move in rhythm with the ticking all around us. "Time doesn't like to be kept," he said gently. "It prefers to wander. That's why I built this place, to give it somewhere to rest." He stepped aside, motioning toward the tree he'd been working on. Embedded within its bark were dozens of small clock faces, each one showing a slightly different hour. Some ticked forward, some backward, others paused completely as if lost in thought. The branches above were full of golden leaves shaped like cogs, turning with a whisper each time a breeze passed through. I could hear them clicking faintly, like the quiet laughter of something very old and very kind. He adjusted one of the smaller dials and smiled to himself, pleased with whatever invisible correction he had made. "Every moment has its own pace," he said. "Some hurry, some linger. Here, they all get the chance to find their rhythm again. I just help them remember it." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny metal seed, smooth and perfectly round. He placed it in my hand. It was warm, faintly vibrating, like a heartbeat captured inside brass. "Plant it anywhere you like," he said. "It will grow the moment you forget what time it is." I turned the seed between my fingers, watching it catch the light. It was so simple, yet impossibly intricate, etched with lines too fine to follow. I asked him what would grow from it, and he smiled again, his gaze drifting toward the garden's edge. "Something patient," he said softly. "Something that waits." Then, as if remembering something far away, he added, "But only if you leave it alone long enough." The air shifted slightly as a breeze passed through, carrying the faint sound of distant chimes. I followed the sound down a path lined with copper-framed lanterns, each one swaying gently as though keeping time with the wind. The garden opened wider here, revealing a small pond in the center where ripples moved in slow, perfect circles. The surface reflected the sky above, though the stars were turning far slower than they should have been. I watched one drift lazily across the water, leaving a trail of silver light that faded before it reached the edge. Somewhere behind me, the clockmaker wound one of his great brass trees, and the sound carried across the air like the closing of a distant door. The ticking of the garden grew softer for a moment, then settled into a new rhythm, slower, deeper, calm. I found a patch of soil near the pond and pressed the metal seed into the ground. The earth accepted it without sound. When I looked up, the stars had stopped moving altogether. It seemed the garden had decided to wait with me. The garden was silent for a long time after I pressed the seed into the soil. Even the air seemed to wait, holding itself still, as though listening for a sound that hadn't yet begun. The pond rippled once, then settled again, its mirrored surface undisturbed except for the faint reflection of a passing cloud that never truly arrived. I stayed there, crouched beside the earth, wondering if anything had happened at all. Then I noticed it, the faintest shimmer beneath the dirt, like a heartbeat made of light. The soil began to breathe. It rose and fell with the rhythm of something waking, small grains shifting and turning until a single shoot emerged, slender, metallic, its surface glinting like dew made of glass. It grew slowly, uncoiling upward until it was as tall as my hand, its stem ticking faintly in perfect time with my pulse. When the breeze passed over it, it chimed, not like a bell, but like the smallest note of a forgotten melody, half remembered and whole all at once. The sound filled the garden like light spilling across still water. I glanced around and realized that every clock in sight, those grown from branches, those buried in roots, those hidden beneath the moss, had started moving again. Their rhythms no longer fought each other. Each tick seemed to answer the next, weaving together a slow and steady song that pulsed through the ground beneath my feet. It was the kind of sound that made you want to stop counting moments altogether. Even the air seemed to glow with it, a golden haze that softened every edge until the garden felt weightless. The clockmaker stood a few paces behind me, hands folded in front of him, watching quietly. He didn't speak, but I could feel his satisfaction in the way the silence shaped itself around him. When he finally did, his words were almost a whisper. "Most people think time moves forward," he said. "But it doesn't. It grows outward, upward, into every direction it can find. Some of it becomes memory, some becomes dream, and a little of it," he smiled, "becomes this." The plant kept growing, its leaves unfolding like pages, each one etched with faint markings that shifted when I tried to read them. I reached out to touch one, and the surface rippled, showing flashes of scenes I half remembered, a street light flickering in the rain, a clock tower ringing at noon, a friend laughing somewhere far away. They appeared and vanished too quickly to grasp, as if the plant was showing me not my past, but the way time remembered me. The thought made my chest ache in the softest way. All around, the sound of ticking had softened again, turning into something closer to breathing. The garden swayed gently, leaves moving in patterns that didn't follow the wind. It felt like I was standing in the center of a clock that didn't measure seconds, but heartbeats. I looked back toward the clockmaker, but he was gone. His tools left neatly on a bench, a single gear still spinning from where his hand had been. Somewhere, a bell chimed once more, and the garden seemed to hum in reply. I stood there for what could have been minutes or years. The new plant glowed faintly at my feet, its light soft and rhythmic, like it was breathing alongside me. The pond reflected it perfectly, a second version, suspended just below the surface, ticking in harmony. I knew that when I left, it would keep growing. And maybe, somewhere in the world beyond the gate, time would remember to slow down for a while too. I followed a narrow stone path that wound deeper into the garden, where the air grew cooler and the ticking more distant. Here the sound seemed to come from beneath the ground, not from clocks or gears, but from the soil itself, a slow, patient rhythm that pulsed like the world's own heartbeat. The plants were different here. Their leaves were made of thin silver filaments that shimmered as they moved, and their stems curved in elegant spirals that caught the light in long, deliberate turns. Everywhere I looked, motion was measured, intentional, and impossibly calm. The trees overhead had bark patterned like watch faces, smooth and pale with faint markings that changed when I blinked. Numbers glowed softly, faded, then reappeared somewhere else, as if time itself was rearranging its own order. A faint breeze passed through, and I could hear the faint chorus of ticking and chiming blending together. Not mechanical, but organic, as if each leaf and petal carried its own small hour. It was beautiful in a way I couldn't quite name. I found an archway covered in vines of bronze wire that hummed faintly when touched by wind. Beyond it lay a small clearing, circular and perfectly still. At its center stood an enormous clock half buried in the ground, its face cracked and overgrown with moss, its hands motionless. Despite its stillness, I could feel it breathing beneath the soil, slow, deep, steady. It felt like standing beside the heart of the garden, the place where all its hours began and ended. As I approached, the air grew heavier, not unpleasantly, but with the weight of something vast and living. I knelt beside the clock, tracing a finger over its glass, cold and smooth as water. Tiny fractures ran across its surface like frozen lightning, and within them, faint glimmers of light pulsed with each breath I took. The ticking beneath the ground matched the rhythm of my own heartbeat, or maybe it was the other way around. Either way, the sound felt personal, as if the garden had decided to remember me the way it remembered time. I spoke softly without thinking, my voice small in the vast quiet. Is this where it started? The air answered in a low vibration that rippled through the ground. For a moment, the great clock shuddered, its hands twitching slightly before settling back into stillness. It was enough. The movement was so small it could have been imagined, but it carried the unmistakable feeling of acknowledgement, as if the garden had heard and simply wanted me to know that, yes, it remembered. The light shifted again, taking on a faint golden hue that deepened toward the horizon of trees. All around me, gears hidden in the branches began to turn, slow, lazy rotations that stirred the air with warmth. The garden exhaled, and I realized that dusk had fallen without warning. I hadn't noticed the change, but now the air carried that unmistakable scent of evening, metal, earth, and the last trace of light. The clocks didn't dim with the sunset. They glowed brighter instead, as if they preferred the hours when everything else went quiet. For the first time, I understood why the Clockmaker had called this a resting place for time. Here, it didn't move or pass or end. It simply existed, growing and breathing like any living thing. And as I stood there, surrounded by the steady hum of turning gears and whispering leaves, I felt something shift inside me. A small space opened, the kind that makes room for silence. Not empty, but full of peace. And for that moment, it felt like I had stepped outside the idea of hours entirely. When I turned to leave the clearing, the Clockmaker was already there. He stood in the archway I'd passed through, the faint light from the vines tracing soft lines across his coat. He looked older than before, though I wasn't sure how I could tell. Maybe it was the way his shoulders curved slightly forward, or how his voice carried the weight of someone who had lived in every moment more than once. "You found the first clock," he said quietly. "Most people walk right past it. It doesn't like to be noticed." He stepped closer, his boots barely making a sound on the moss-covered stone. "This one doesn't tell time," he continued, kneeling beside the buried face. "It listens to it. Every sound, every pause, even silence has its own hour here." He brushed his fingertips across the surface, and the great clock answered with a low hum that seemed to vibrate through the ground, through my bones, through the air itself. "The garden needs this," he said. "Without it, time starts to rush again. People forget how to breathe between things." I asked how long he'd been tending it, but he didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into the pocket of his coat and took out a small brass key, its teeth worn smooth by use. He turned it slowly between his fingers, the motion perfectly synchronized with the ticking beneath our feet. "Long enough," he said at last, "long enough to know that you can't control time, only keep it company." He placed the key into a slot near the base of the clock, and with one gentle twist, the entire garden seemed to inhale. The trees shivered. The water in the pond stilled completely. Every sound folded into itself until only one remained: the slow, resonant heartbeat of the clock deep below the soil. Then, like the faint sigh of wind through an empty hall, the world began to move again. Leaves rustled, light flickered, the air grew warm and alive. The clockmaker closed his eyes and smiled, as if feeling the pulse of a familiar friend. He looked at me then, his gaze calm but knowing. "People forget that time isn't supposed to hurry," he said. "It isn't a race or a current, it's a garden. You don't push it, you tend it. You let it bloom, and when it's ready, it rests." His hand brushed across the air, and for a moment, I could see faint trails of gold light drifting between the plants, threads connecting every clock, every petal, every quiet second that had ever passed here. They glowed softly, like constellations drawn across the surface of the world. I wanted to ask what would happen if he ever left. But before I could speak, he seemed to understand. "This place doesn't belong to me," he said simply. "It grows on its own now. Every visitor brings a little piece of their time here, whether they mean to or not. When they leave, something new takes root." He smiled faintly, eyes half closed. "Maybe one day, it will stop needing me." We stood there together for a while, listening to the faint ticking that filled the air again. It wasn't mechanical anymore. It sounded more like rain against glass, or the sound of someone breathing in their sleep. The clockmaker turned and began to walk back toward the path, his steps slow, deliberate, leaving no marks on the moss. Before he disappeared from sight, he said over his shoulder, "The garden always keeps time for those who've forgotten theirs." Then he was gone. I looked once more at the great buried clock, its hands motionless, its face gleaming softly in the dim light. The world around me had gone utterly still again, not frozen, but balanced. And somewhere deep beneath the surface, I could feel that slow, patient heartbeat continue on, unbothered by beginnings or endings. It just kept breathing. When I finally turned to leave, the air around me had changed. It was lighter now, no longer heavy with the weight of ticking hours. The garden seemed to breathe in slow waves, every leaf and petal rising and falling in gentle rhythm. I walked back toward the gate, following the winding path through the trees, though it felt like the garden itself was leading me out, the same way it might guide a seed toward light. Behind me, I could still hear the faint ticking deep in the ground, the sound of time settling comfortably into rest. The air shimmered again where the light broke through the branches. Dust drifted through the beams like slow-moving stars, and for a moment, I imagined that each one was a tiny hour floating free. Somewhere near the stream, a faint chime rang out, followed by the soft echo of another, not in perfect rhythm, but close enough to feel alive. I passed the pond, where the small plant I'd buried earlier now stood taller, its metallic leaves turning gently to catch the fading light. For a moment, I thought I saw its reflection move out of sync with the plant itself, as though one was from the present and the other from a few seconds ahead. I stopped beside it, unsure of whether to touch it or leave it alone. The surface of the pond was still, holding a reflection of the sky, but there was no sun, no stars, only the faint outline of a clock's face drawn in ripples. It flickered once, then vanished as the water calmed again. I realized then that the garden wasn't just keeping time, it was teaching it how to rest, how to pause without ending, how to wait without wanting. The path narrowed the farther I went, and soon the sound of the garden began to fade. First the ticking, then the hum, then the faint chorus of unseen chimes. By the time I reached the iron gate, there was only the sound of the wind, gentle and unassuming. When I looked back, I saw nothing but trees and shadows, the gate now seeming to guard nothing at all. Still, the scent of metal and moss lingered in the air, faint but certain. The kind of scent that stays with you long after you've left. I stepped through and found myself back on the narrow lane, the evening sky settling into shades of deep violet and gray. Somewhere far off, a bell tolled once, then again, not from the garden, but from the waking world, marking an hour I'd already lost track of. For a moment, I thought about the seed beneath the pond and the way it had grown without any need for attention. Maybe that was what the Clockmaker meant, that time doesn't need to be managed, only trusted. Left alone, it finds its own way forward. I kept walking until the lane curved out of sight. The world was quiet again, but not empty, filled instead with that same soft rhythm that had followed me out of the garden. Each step seemed to echo faintly, as though the ground itself was keeping pace with me. And as I walked, I realized that maybe time had slowed after all. Not everywhere. Just here. Just now. Just enough to remind me that the hours I'd lost hadn't really gone anywhere. They were simply waiting, quietly, to be found again. So here's where the story ends. As you lie asleep, whisked away by thoughts and dreams that belong entirely to you. The garden fades now, its quiet ticking blending softly into the rhythm of your breath. Time has settled again, unhurried, content to rest where it is. There's no need to chase it, no need to hold it still. Just let it drift. The night will keep watch for a while. If your eyes are still open, let them grow heavy now. If your mind is still busy, let it wander somewhere gentle, somewhere quiet, where nothing is required of you. You've done enough for one day. Just breathe, and let sleep come find you when it's ready. Good night. And may your dreams keep perfect time until the morning returns.